Good morning everybody. It is 11 o'clock on a Monday here in the UK. My name is Maggie Rose Cunningham and I'm here to bring you Middle Earth readings for our week ahead. This week we actually have, unbelievably, no planetary movements. Other than, I should say, Loki's chariot is completing its transit into retrograde. And we talked a little bit about that last week. But yeah, I'll talk a little bit about that too. But what I mainly want to focus on today is, obviously, for those of you who are here with me live, please do share your rune of the week. But I wanted to look a little bit at how our personal wyrd, our personal fate, destiny, whatever you want to call it, and the collective wyrd, the flow of everything else, and how they work together, and really the purpose behind doing Middle Earth readings and working on identifying and working with our heroic destinies. Why do we do it? Why is it important to us? And it can be helpful, I think, when we have weeks like this, when there is less shifting happening. We're in a steady stream, is the way you might think about it, a steady current of energy from last week. That's a time when we can pause and we can say, okay, well, what's happening for me right now? And I think that's really helpful for us at this point as well, because we have a lot of deep energetic work happening through the planets. Because Odin's chariot, we know, is taking this very long journey through Ingu's, the rune of the seed and gestation, deep within the womb of Mother Earth. And Frigg is in Largu's, the rune of water, again, that sort of liminal gateway energy. Largus and Ingus actually work very, very well together, the sort of fertilizing force of Largus and the seed, of Ingus. So they work very well together, but they do provide us with this sense of stuff happening beneath the surface that sometimes can feel a little bit challenging for us, because we can sense it energetically, but we're not necessarily being called to do a lot. It's a sort of happening to type of sensation. And I mentioned as well, as I said, with Loki's chariot, so it's that Saturn, Roman equivalent Saturn, is moving into retrograde himself. That can make us feel a little bit wild, a little bit out of control, because that force of Loki, like testing and prodding and making us like toe the line because of his wildness in many ways, is absent. And he tests us, he challenges us, and he says, you need to take responsibility for this, because I, your rule breaker, your trickster, your scapegoat, you can blame me, but you'll still, follow the path because I'm there doing the things that nobody else wants to do. He's absent, and he calls on us, and he says, sometimes you need to take responsibility as well for this. So being in discipline, and focus is something that he's calling us to do, and it's not easy. Because he's not there, but it's a stepping into maturity. And I do believe that a lot of this work is about reclaiming that sense of ourselves as spiritual beings, as as we age, stepping into elderhood, and claiming wisdom in a world that is incredibly incredibly clever, huge technological advances. We've shown that we have the great ability to solve problems when we need to. And yet those harder, longer term decisions seem to be, outside of our grasp a lot more. So when I think about destiny, more and more I do think about it as being each of us having, an heroic pathway. That at this point in time, because of where we are with humanity having a lot more ability to influence, what's happening out there in the world, and, a small number of people, you might argue, impacting on a large number of people, not always in a positive way, sometimes in a positive way, but we have a lot more ability to influence big events and to do so very rapidly in a way that wasn't the case for our ancestors. And so that sense in which at this point for me, the northern tradition is experiencing a reawakening, because it is very much about responsibility and about acting even when it's hard, and about accepting our own imperfections. The deities themselves are imperfect and flawed, and perhaps they do that in order to offer teaching. Perhaps they are imperfect and flawed, we don't know one way or the other, but they strive and they try and they do their best, and they honor each other, and they give us templates to help us to work forward. So if we think about destiny in this sense, we could think about it as each of us, being birthed into the world, having perhaps already taken oaths or vows, within the halls of the gods for things that we wanted to do and achieve, for a way of being that we wanted to champion, or for a purpose that was important to us. And that part of this process of finding our own wyrd is claiming that more strongly in a world where we are shaped and conditioned individually by our family backgrounds and cultural backgrounds, by our schools, who say you should be this and you should fit into this template and you should do this, and then by our employers. Normally that's the sort of the grand scheme, isn't it? So family, school, employers. And if there's something that's a bit off kilter in any of that, where do we go? Where do we look? And finding a sense of self and a sense of what's the word that I'm looking for? It doesn't tell you what to do. It opens you up to the inner compass within you, is what I believe a lot of this work does. A lot of working with our runes, working with any system that connects us with spirit and recognizes us as being part of spirit as well. So we have that with our individual destiny, that sense in which maybe society, our social identity is very, very strong and we're being shaped all of the time, rather than discovering based on, what our bodies tell us and what our spirits tell us and what our souls tell us as well. And then we have a collective destiny, which used to be very much shaped by, human destiny was very much shaped by war and tribe and scarcity, the food supply, those sorts of things. And to a certain extent that is true now, but it's different. We are shaped by large economies working across the globe. We are shaped by the media, who are there and speaking to us all the time and telling us, what to believe. And those are very much centered in one might call it a rational or intellectual power base and an emotional power base, fear of loss, and what it means to be successful, and what if I'm not good enough, all of these things. They're rational and emotional, but there's less of the spiritual. And so doing this work as well, to connect in with the planetary movements, gives us a broader perspective. It helps us to feel part of something much bigger than Joe Bloggs over there has got a better car than me. It connects us in with what is bigger. It helps us to synthesize all of our different modes of intelligence, rational, emotional, bodily, spiritual, brings all of those together to create meaning for us. As I've said, it connects us to something bigger. And it also relates to luck building, which is really important and very specific to the northern tradition, this idea that when we are flowing with our own wyrd, we are drawing in energetically, luck to us, and that is going to allow us to do what we need to do in the world with more success. We're going to attract positive stuff into us. So that's what we're talking about when we think about, or what I'm talking about when I think about individual destiny and collective destiny, that we have this tapestry, collective destiny, and we have individual destiny. And collective destiny is ultimately made up of our individual destinies plus what's happening with the planets, plus what's happening with the gods. It is everything together, and we can either flow with it or we can pull against it, and it's harder when we pull against it. So what I wanted to share with you was two pieces that I talk about sometimes, but maybe just to be a little bit more explicit about the ways that we can work with destiny. So our individual destiny, we can do things like rune readings, which we're doing today, and I know people will be sharing their individual runes. We can do our rune readings, what's coming up for me, how can I flow more powerfully with my wyrd. These are good questions to ask. How can I be, which rune will empower me through the course of this week? These are questions that we can ask that will help us to hone in with our individual destiny. And we can, with the collective destiny, we can work with our runic astrology, of course. It's just that we don't have any runes happening this week. The other thing that we can do is we can work with our birth runes. So I sometimes talked about our birth runes. Last week I gave you a little bit of an overview of the planets and how they work, particularly the inner planets. So for those of you who have seen a star wheel, use the Sacred Play Journal and get your planetary movements each month, you'll be familiar with this diagram. So this is something that we provide as part of Suna's Star Wheel, so that you can include your runes, your personal runes. You can draw them into this diagram, which is basically, this is like the tree, the world tree. You can imagine it as the world tree. So up here at the top, we've got like the realm of the gods and Asgard. So we've got your Frigg's chariot and your Odin's chariot at the very top in the conscious realm of the conscious mind, and your Suna's chariot. So that's your sun rune, which is the one that we always suggest you start with. Then beneath that, you've got Mani's chariot, so the moon still up in the upper realms, and you've got the north node and the south node. So the north node and the south node are the points on the ecliptic where the sun and the moon intersect, as they would have been calculated at the moment of your birth, and they relate to your like past incarnations. Is the north node, south node, apologies, and your north node is where you're traveling to through the course of this lifetime. So they're again really useful for understanding your individual destiny. So we've got a bit of conscious, what's happening consciously with Odin's chariot and Frigg's chariot, and then we've got our hero makers. And then we move on to, this is your first thread in the middle here, which is your earth rune. It's the rune, which rune was on the horizon at the point that you were born. And then you've got Loki's chariot, Tyr's chariot, and Thor's chariot. So Saturn, Mars, and Jupiter. And each of them, similar to Frigg and Odin, they are more, let's say, societal. They're more embedded. They take us a little bit longer. They connect a little bit more to the collective consciousness. So each of them is like an initiatory path, a personal initiatory pathway for us, helping us to express our heroic destiny out into the world. So you can think about school as being collective. Conditioning is too strong a word, and by the way, I'm a really big fan of education, and I've worked in education for 25 years, and I totally believe in it. But alongside what we need to learn that is shared, we need to learn what's unique for us, and that's what this is really doing. It's saying, what's unique for me. So you have your chariots here, and then you have your Nornir's gift. Now that's your birth hour. This is the rune here that the Norns gave to you at the point that you were born, because they looked at the rest of your runes and they went, oh, Maggie could do with a bit of balancing Uru's energy, because she's got a lot of really fast-paced runes. She's going to be getting a lot of information and downloads during her life. Let's ground them with a bit of Uru's energy. So the Nornir, they look at that and they say, what does this person need to manifest their most powerful destiny? And they gift that rune. And then right at the bottom, we have Aegir's chariot, Wyrrd's chariot, and Hela's chariot. And these are very deep, subconscious, collective, operating over a scale of years. So this is, you will be familiar with this from runic astrology, apart from the Nornir's gift. So you have a rune, an individual rune in each of these positions, and they provide you with your birth runes. And so what we can do is we can then say, okay, so Suna's chariot is here. That means that in my half month, around my birthday, 2 weeks, 2 week segment that my birthday falls in, I can work with my Suna's chariot rune, and that's going to be really powerful and important to me. But you might also look and you might say, oh, well, I've got Odin's chariot and Ewaz, so when that comes up, that will be powerful for me. And actually, for me, Tyr's chariot is in Ewaz at the moment, so I'm looking at the link between those two deities and saying, how can Tyr support me in manifesting and understanding my Ewaz energy more strongly? So we can start to use the movements of the planets in the present moment to understand how they're going to work for us, when there are going to be opportunities for us, when there might be challenges for us, and when we have an opportunity to go a bit deeper. So Tyr, we worked with him last month, as you know, in the hearth space, and he's definitely come forward for me as a guide at the moment, which is incredibly helpful because I'm working with my Ewaz energy. So if you want to know your birth runes, there are 2 ways that you can do that. If you're a member of the Hearth Space, of the Inner Circle classes, you have your birth runes kit, your self-discovery toolkit is part of the Inner Circle offer. So you sign up, you pay your £15 for the month, you get access to all of the classes, you also get the recordings to all of the classes, and you also get a number of other resources in there, which includes your birth rune self-discovery kit. It does take patience and time to do that and get them. But you can do that, and then you'll know them and you'll have them. If you are thinking, that sounds really complicated and I'd also like to know more about it, you can have your birth runes report done, and we will do that for you. And what you will end up with, so this is I think this is like page 4 of our birth runes report, and basically you get a little, this is not exciting, it doesn't look exciting. This is all of the list of the planets that I just described here, and you get each of your runes calculated for you. You also get the hall, so the hall that rune was in at the time, and they become like a patron, so that's an additional layer of support that you get. You can go and visit that deity. And you also get the hearth, which is the hearths of the Asinur. And again, each of them has a realm, so you actually get a very nuanced. Okay, my north node is in Kines, and the hall is Glitnir, Forseti's hall, so I can go and I can speak to him. He's the mediator, he can help me to balance those energies. And my hearth owner is Var, so I can go and I can speak to her, and she also helps me. She's great with mediating as well. So there's a lot more information, and you get about 23 pages of explanation then about that table in your report to sort of help you on your way with your birth runes. So I wanted to bring that in because it is not something that I often get an opportunity to talk about in more depth. And I think it is, you know, the more that I do this work, the more I realise that the runes have come forward so powerfully for us in the last, 1982, I want to say, was when that's my understanding of when it sort of started, when they started to surge more into our consciousness. But the birth runes provide us with a very, very personal experience of working with the runes as personal guides and supporters in our work. So I thought I would just take that opportunity to speak to you a little bit more about that. You're going to have to bear with me because I'm going to cough for a moment. One second, I'm going to get some water. Sorry about that dramatic pause. I've just spent 3 days in London. I hardly ever go to London anymore. When I go to London, I get sick. Boundaries, Maggie, boundaries. So, where were we? So yes, maybe that was just a dramatic pause while you thought about your birth runes. And I know many of you who are here on the live know your birth runes already, but if you're interested in your birth runes, like I say, you can calculate them using our self-discovery kit, or you can get your birth runes report done, and it's just a beautiful system to work with to weave your destiny strongly. So let's have a look at what runes you've got coming up. And serendipitously, I've been talking about Ewaz and saying how, Ewaz is the rune that I'm thinking about a lot at the moment and working with, and your rune felicity is Ewaz. So Ewaz is the rune of, it's the rune of partnership. And for me, it's very much about dynamic partnership. It's always about the ebb and flow of power that we find in true partnership, where we don't have, one person or one creature in this case, because it's the horse and the rider. That one partner is always dominant and the other one is always, sort of submissive or subservient within the relationship. And I think this is important when we think about leadership and self-leadership and questioning, and our ability to question each other and to have perhaps like difficult conversations in society today. Ewaz is one of the runes in the third 8, so the last of the families of the runes, and all of them ask us to integrate and move into maturity. They say, the world isn't black and white, because by the time we get to the third 8, we've had the primal energies from the first 8, which sometimes can feel more straightforward, easier sometimes to recognise energetically because they flow so strongly. We're doing in the Rune Magics workshop on Friday, which is available as a recording in the Heart Space at the moment and will be for the next week. We were talking about the way, I could really feel the rune, I could really feel Feyu. And they do tend to be easier for us to identify straight away, whereas with Ewaz, for example, when we channel Ewaz through the body, often we can feel the threads of some of the other runes within that rune, because it's woven, it's bringing together and combining, it's sort of synthesis. And all of the runes in the final 8 do that work of synthesizing. And so Ewaz is inviting you to think into power and to imagine. There's an imagining, I think, a sort of visioning going on here for me with the Ewaz. What would a society look like where power ebbed and flowed in a different way, so that it wasn't always held by, in a hierarchical sense. This is where the power is, and this is where it is not. And instead it flowed where it was needed in the moment. And you might think about that just in terms of, like healing in the body, for example, that when we get sort of old stagnant energy and where we don't have flow, we can get overactive parts of the body where, that are taking all the stress and all the tension, and underactive parts of the body that are weaker because of that. And we often work, as healers, we work to make the flow through the body more dynamic, and to ensure that there is a balance. You could think about it as the yin and yang balance for those. I know a lot of people will understand that metaphor, that we must always be flowing and having the tension, the creative tension. You can also see it in the tree of life, the Kabbalistic tree of life. The flow from one to another, and Ewaz embodies that very much. So for me, Felicity, I think it's almost suggesting that, part of the work that we do in the world is about discovering an idea or holding a vision of what might be possible. And it's not always about saying, I am then responsible for bringing it forward. But for some of us in the world, it is actually just about holding what might be possible and going, I see a world where. And remembering that when we do that, we embed that into the collective consciousness. We were talking about individual and collective wyrd. It's not just about what happens in the physical world. It is also about what happens in the realm of ideas. So I suspect maybe that, I know that you're a deep thinking person. And I feel as if it's saying, there's something there for you to hold around what partnership and cooperation and collaboration could look like. Cheryl, let's see. So you've got Rado. Rado on its side is interesting, because I was just about to say that Ewaz is a rune of movement, obviously, with the horse and the rider, and then Rado is as well with the road. And it's, the horse or the rider going along the road. But when you said that it's on its side, it reminds me, I did a set of virtual rune cards at one point, and I remember with Rado talking about it's not just the journey that we travel, it's the road that we leave behind us. And there is a sense for me there of stepping into what I refer to as sort of spiritual matriarchy, where you're recognizing that what you do lays the path for others. And so the radar on its side isn't saying, lie down and you're not moving forward and things like that. It's saying, actually, sometimes it can take longer, because what you're looking to do is to create something permanent. And you might think about that in terms of ritual practice, but it might just be in terms of your way of being, or the way that you approach the world, and recognizing that sometimes what's important is not just what we do, but how we share that and how we embody that and how we make that visible. And I think that is something that's very important within often these types of communities are referred to as like alternative communities, alternative from the norm or the main. And there is a sense of operating in shadow or at the edges. And for me, there is more and more a sense in which there's many alternative communities in the world have a lot to offer. And it goes back to that Ewaz partnership of, how much better the world would be if we were able to look at the solutions as coming from anywhere where they were meant to, and not just, they have to come from the centre. And so there is a sense for me of just sort of there's a patience within there because of the the radar rune is on its side, but it's saying the patience isn't because it's not the right time or you're not ready or anything like that. It's actually because what you're doing is leaving a legacy. Again, flowing beautifully on. So Marie, you have a Thala, but it's a Merc stave. So a Thala is the rune of estate and legacy, which is interesting. Therefore, that we were just talking about Rado and Ewaz as well. I suppose we were also talking about that idea of how do we influence the collective in our work. So the Athala Merc stave, to me, recognises again that part of the work that particularly people who are highly sensitive, empathic, just naturally gifted seers are often doing is carrying the burden. So here's the Athala rune here, and this is when it's upside down. Often what they are doing is they are sensitive to and carrying a burden of what has come before, the woundings of the ancient past, the inherited stories, things that need to be cleansed and cleared and honoured, that shouldn't hold us back, but that we need to honour and recognise if we are to do better. It's in many ways another aspect of spiritual matriarchy or spiritual leadership, let's say, of your clan or your tribe. And the question, therefore, Marie, for me would be around saying, how can I step out of maybe feeling the weight or the burden of the past into a space where I recognise that I am strong enough to be, the spiritual leader or the priestess, standing and holding that space for my tribe to do that honouring, so that we can then be more fully in the present. That what rituals might you need to bring into your life? What work could you do? What stories could you tell? What paintings could you do? What work could you do, like in your garden, to plant flowers in such a way that it's the honouring of the dead and the past and the continual. It's like the rising of story and the recognition of story and the honouring of story, so that it may fall back down again into the past. So it's that flow. It's like the sea, the tide of the sea coming in and coming out. And when we don't play our part in that, saying, the tide has come in and there is wisdom here, and we do need to recognise this, and we do need to recognise that perhaps some grief that is unreleased has come through from this. And we are ready, and we do have the tools to bring through the lessons and the wisdom and do the healing and then release. And that's part of the path there. Cheryl says, so like the flat side was facing upwards. Just to say, I don't think that makes a difference in this context. I think that what I was seeing with the radar rune, if I can find the radar rune, we've got the radar rune. So the radar rune is normally this way up. So it could lie on its side like this, which would be like lying down, but actually the fact that you said it was like this was even more interesting, because to me then it's even more like it's pointing to the road at the top, and like you're becoming the road. So yeah, even better in many ways. Suzanne has a collection of runes. So let's make a start on here. You've got Ingus for you. So we know that Odin is still in Ingus, and I feel as if there is perhaps a message or something important, something precious, that he is inviting you to almost like walk with him and walk beside him up until the summer solstice, to claim that gift. And it might be almost that sense that you already know that you have it, but it's honouring that. And I do feel that sense that we're being asked to do a lot of honouring work through the course of this week. Or when I see it, I'm literally seeing it as you sort of walking the road, maybe because we've had road and we've had legacy, but you're with Odin and you're emerging out from the darkness into the light of the land, but you're not home yet. You still have to walk the land and almost be seen. There's a little bit of Dick Whittington going on there, almost with the, when they have the stick and the pack on the back, and it's like Ingus is the pack that you're carrying. And it's recognising that and just allowing yourself to be present and visible with that. Yeah, before it becomes normal is the sense that I get. You know, it's like you go and you claim a gift and you do the work, and then you integrate it, and then you move on, and you don't always do that work of going, actually that was really hard and I'm really proud of doing that. So it is saying, you know, enjoy that freedom in some ways that we get before the grooves of, you know, this is the way that I do it and this is the process that I have and all of those things. Before it becomes habit or ritual, you're still in that creative stage where you're going, oh, you know, I could walk this way, or I could swing the ingoose pack in that way. There's a freedom and an honouring that needs to happen before it becomes sort of integrated and permanent, is the sense that I'm getting. Ren, you have Gibo. So Gibo looks like the X, but it's obviously the G with the gifting there. And it's a slightly different energy to what we've had. And I can see that we've got Ansus coming up next, which again is, there's a different energy, the energy of exchange. So whereas for Suzanne, Odin is on the path, here for me, Odin is already, you know, there's always a part of him that's still, you know, the All-Father still on the throne, you know, and he's there smiling. There's a benevolence to this as well, recognizing you. And again, there's a moment of reflection taking place. I would suggest, maybe not even journaling is not the right, it's not the right thing. It's like a mirror. It's like literally spending some time looking at yourself in the mirror and knowing that you are seen by the gods and recognized in all your, you know, all your glory and your fabulousness, and that there is nothing to do at this point. There is no push. There is no I must do this and I must do that in order to prove myself. So whereas Suzanne's, you know, walking her road and Odin's beside her, and, you know, maybe they're having a little chat, I don't know, and there's that sort of intimate celebration in that sense, and a freedom before, you know, you stand before the people and you sort of make the rhythm. For you, this is a Odin standing in front of you and recognizing you and honoring you in that sense, and asking you to recognize the power of Gibo within you and recognize that that is something that you are able to claim for yourself, that ability to have balance, to give generously, but also to hold your boundaries and to receive. And he's saying you do have that, but that you need to bring that more into your conscious mind, into his realm. You know, bring that up to the surface as something that you should be proud of. You know, that we get to choose when we gift and when we receive. You know, and just taking some time, maybe not doing it consciously, it is looking in the mirror and saying, you know, I am already able to do this. And I'd like you to imagine as you're doing this that you're actually standing in like sort of a queen or sovereign state when you do it. So bringing the shoulders down, maybe imagining that you've got a crown on your head, and if you feel a bit awkward and embarrassed, just remembering that Odin expects you to do this. You know, it's no one feels ready to step forward and have the crown placed upon their heads, you know, so but do it anyway, that's what it's saying. Esther, so you have Ansu. So this is, for me, there's a communication, and it's an honouring of communication and almost mindfulness for you, literally just a mindfulness of when you are giving and how you're communicating. That can be with the body, it can be with the voice, it can be with written word, and when you are receiving. And for me, it is very much about bringing mindfulness to that, mindfulness and presence to those moments through the course of this week. And so recognizing the flow of Ansus and almost imagining that it as a flow of, you know, inspiration that comes, and you're gathering it in and then you're channeling it out, however you do it. And it could be, you know, I'm writing my shopping list, or, you know, I'm thinking shopping mad, so I'm literally like, I'm at the till saying thank you, whatever that is. But that is in itself a divine expression, you know. And so it's just bringing conscious awareness to the the flow of energy outwards with the Ansus rune and the flow of energy inwards with the Ansus rune, and bringing presence to that and just seeing what insights come for you from that. Then we have, let me make sure that I'm getting these with the right people attached to the right things. So Ingus for Suzanne, Ren for Gibo, Esther for Ansus, Chen is Kines. So Chen, hi. Yeah, our creative force of Kines. And I can see this as the torch, the flickering torch is burning. And again, perhaps it's with the Esther's Ansus coming just before it. It's about that flow of oxygen that makes the torch burn brighter. And it's almost looking at what is the fuel for you for your creativity, and recognizing that your flame will only burn as bright as the fuel that it has access to. And this is both the oxygen, the flow of oxygen, which you might think of as being like inspiration that's coming through the mind, and the fuel from the body. So, what you're eating, how much sleep you're getting, how much exercise you're getting, all of those sorts of things. Those are the physical fuel that allow you to express the Keenaz energy. It's very much saying, tending to those things rather than focusing on the creative output at this point is what's important, because it's almost saying that we in modern society, I think, pay quite a lot of attention to, oh, that person's creative, they're creative, and it's like this natural gift that you've been given, rather than maybe recognizing that it's also how much time you have available, and how much encouragement you are given to do that, and how much space you have available, and what materials you have available to you. That there is a process of fostering our creativity within that. And also thinking quite broadly about what creativity means in that sense. So Keenaz is a rune of transformation that transforms, one state of being into another with intention. So it's not always like, look at this beautiful painting that I have done. It could literally be, look at the way in which I create, I make this room, or I cook a meal, or anything where you are physically transforming. This is also a rune of healers, because for surgeons and doctors, people who work with their hands as well. It's very much Keenaz energy. The reshaping of illness, I suppose, is the way that you might see it, or the reshaping of the body. And so it's just looking at the raw materials of creativity for you, is the sense that I get there. Troy, you have Tewaz, and it's Tewaz sideways, so lying on its side. I feel as if what I'm seeing for you, Troy, as that comes down, is almost that sense of, imagine that you are, I'm coming back to the pathway now, the pathway that we saw with Suzanne, and that you're walking the path, and that it's like there's a sword on the ground, or almost imagine like a sacred cave or a burial chamber, or somewhere that you've gone on pilgrimage, maybe looking for one thing and then finding another, and that it's almost like saying there is a purpose or a cause that you can choose to become a warrior for at this point, but you get to choose whether or not you pick up that sword, and you can spend time in deciding whether to do that or not. You don't have to immediately say, oh, I see the sword and I'm going to go and pick it up. You might spend some time thinking, okay, is there something that I'm being called to? And it might be, it might be a new job, or it might be charity work, or it might be tending to the land in a particular way, or honouring your family tree. There's something that is presenting itself to you, and it's recognising that what it's presenting is actually a form of the warrior path. And we were talking about this, if you haven't watched the live with Hermod, have a little watch of the live for Hermod, because what I was talking about the initiatory experience of the divine masculine, and and I can feel that very strongly with like Odin coming forward and saying he's walking next to Suzanne and saying, you've been on this journey, and with Esther as well, with recognizing the breath coming through. There is that sense in which he's quite interested in this, and certainly I always think of Odin as being like Hermod's teacher. And so that sense in which the warrior is someone who isn't reckless. They take stock, they know when to act and they will act. But if they feel as if actually, I don't have all the pieces in place yet, they will wait. The mature warrior. So it is saying, when this opportunity is an opportunity to step into the mature warrior. So the first thing to do is to identify it. Is this what I want to do? Is this what I want to dedicate my time to? And then just have a little look at the live and see if anything comes up for you around that warrior archetype. Could be interesting there. Then we have Darren with Wunyo. Darren, did you have Wunyo before? I'm not sure. So with Wunyo, I'm seeing something different. I'm seeing solitude for you, Darren. That sense in which, whereas, often these readings come through as a journey, and we've seen like Suzanne on the road, and we've seen now Troy as well, almost like stopping and saying, I'm going to go into this sacred space, and then finding something unexpected, an invitation, like a sword lying on the ground that, is a sword dedicated to a purpose that Troy can take up. For you, I was seeing literally moving into, or it's like a temple space filled with light, because Wunyo is a rune of light, a lightness of being, which is why it's talking about solitude not as loneliness, but solitude as in freedom and lightness. So there is, I think, one of the things that might be useful to do for you this week would be energetic cord cutting. You don't need to know what the cords are necessarily, but just sit with the Wunyo rune. You can trace it on your forehead and imagine it becoming light that fills your energy body, and then asking it to show you any connections that need to be cut at this point. And what you can do is, imagine these as white light just coming out like very gently from your energy body. And when you feel it coming, you can take your hand and you can cut it, or you can use a feather, or I've got quite a nice obsidian knife that I can use as well. So something that is going to allow you to cut it, and you do it gently, not in a get off me, just in a that is past and done. And all you're doing is you are returning your energy to integrity, recognizing that we are making those connections all the time, every day. And the important thing is for us to release what's no longer needed. That work is done, whatever it is, and you don't need to know what those are. You don't need to know whether it's, an attachment you had to a friend from years ago, or a belief that you've held that is no longer serving you. It's literally just a question of finding those white lights, and as you find them and feel the threads coming out, you could just make a cutting motion and just imagine it like almost like a spider's web or a cobweb. When you cut them and then they sort of float gently away, and it gets drawn back to whatever it came from, and then your energy seals as well. And so that type, it's not solitude or as in loneliness, it's almost integrity, it's being whole. And saying what Wunyo is calling you into a space of wholeness that relates to freedom, so that you can then move forward after that point. Erica, hello everybody, Pentacles blessings. You have North is for the week. So whereas Wunyo is there's light, obviously North is more of a burning there. I'm really feeling the hands there. Maybe that's because we've just been doing the cutting, Erica. And North is actually, interestingly, because we didn't see this one coming up, is the rune that I would use more for cord cutting work, because it's a rune that supports the creation of knots, but also the untying of knots. And you might think about it almost like, when they say like tie a knot in it is like a way to remember something. So a knot is like a commitment that has been made. And when we do cord cutting, we either say, the commitment has been fulfilled, so it needs to pass, or we say the commitment is no longer serving me, so it needs to be cut. And so skuld comes forward, the norn of that which must be, and she says, let's have a look. So she will look at the tapestry and she'll say, okay, there are bits that are breaking where we need to re-knot and reintegrate and mend. And there are pieces that need to be removed because they're not working. And so she oversees the process of mending and cutting and reshaping, so that, towards that heroic destiny. And I feel as if that's something there that I would just want to leave with you, Erica. It's almost like the school is beckoning and saying, you are a weaver. I invite you to go deeper into the mysteries of mending and cutting and releasing. Is something that it's almost a a longer journey than this week as well, is the sense I'm getting. So there's an invitation there at this point, maybe just to open to North is as a rune that can represent that as well. Was there anything else that I wanted to say within that? Actually, I don't. This is not necessarily just for Erica, but I think maybe an important piece that school just wants me to share because she's got my attention at this point. So one of the ways that I see the North is rune is this is the Gibu rune, the rune of gifts that we had earlier. I want to say it was Ren, but I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that. And Gibo is gifts, but also oaths. So, you know, when you give a gift to somebody, there can be a sense of reciprocity required from that. You know, unless it's a very long-standing relationship, and there's a sense in which, we've already given of each other so much that there's a flow of gifting between us that doesn't require balancing, because, you know, as long as in the long run it flows more easily. For a lot of us, we'll be like, oh no, that person gave me a birthday card, so I need to remember to give them a birthday card. You know, we get that. So gifts can be implicit reciprocal moments where an implicit promise is made. You know, you have given me a birthday card, therefore I will give you one, and the person might be like, oh, they didn't give me one if not. So there's a lot at play, you know, just from a gift. It's also oaths. So we can make a promise or an oath to somebody else or to ourselves. Oh, you know, I'm going to do this. And at the time it feels really good. And then maybe we don't do it, or we keep thinking that we do it, but we don't do it, and we keep thinking we're going to do it, and we don't do it, and it becomes harder and harder. And what happens then is we get tension on the tapestry, and instead of it being the warp threads and the weft threads flowing, they start to pull, and we get these knotty bits in the tapestry. So the North's rune can represent that. It can represent promises and oaths that have been made with good intentions, but something else elsewhere in the tapestry is pulling. Imagine another promise has been made down here. I can't make them line up in a nice way. Imagine like something like that. I don't know. And it's pulling, and that old promise, the old one, is struggling, and we need to make a conscious decision. Is this the priority now, or is this one the priority? And if there's tension, then I need to remove and release that one. So sometimes it can literally be like, I have moved on. The Gibo moment is past. I'm now in the second date. You know, North is in the second date. How do I release? So I wanted to share that. I don't think that's just for you, Erica. I think that's just a really important piece around the North's rune, because people can feel like, oh no, the North's rune has come. But often it's just saying some work is needed, something needs to be tended. Diane, you have Bacana on its side pointing down. Colour me confused. So, interestingly, Diane, I'm seeing as well the road that we saw earlier with our Rado rune, right at the beginning. I'm just looking for the Bacano rune as I'm talking and feeling into your Bacano. Here. So this is the Bacano, and this is, I'm going to try and get it the right way around for you. There we go. Bacano rune, right way around. And that's what Diane is describing there. I know we've been talking a lot about the Ingu seed down here. You know, something that's been, we were talking about in the hearth space, and various discussions about the way in which the Ingu's rune and the Bacano rune work together, and that the Bacano rune can be like a protector of the Ingu's seed. So what I'm seeing is you up here. There's like the conscious mind is up here on the land, you know, and I'm not seeing it as a road so much as the flat land. And then the seed of whatever is rebirthing is down here, and the Bacano rune is acting as a buffer. And the Bacano rune is a protective rune, and it is also a rune of disguise. And it is suggesting to me that there is something gestating and emerging that is not ready to come through, and that however annoying it is for you, the Bacano rune is deliberately protecting you from the full view of the Ingu's seed. Partially to protect it, because maybe the conscious mind would interfere if it didn't do that. And so it's almost saying, allow yourself to be held by the Bacano rune. Feel into the land magics. Feel into that child self as well, because the Bacano rune is a rune that protects our child selves. It's very good for protection for babies and for young girls as they get up as well. I made some really lovely blessing sigils with bind runes, for 3 Bacano runes for my niece when she was born, and you know, she's still got it now, and it's just really lovely, gentle, protective energy. And there are some times when we have to allow ourselves to be in that vulnerable place and place yourself in the bowl of the earth, but also the arms of the Disir, and know that the seed will reveal itself when it's ready. So it's saying, yes, you can be there in confusion, and that is your conscious mind going, I want to know, I want to know, I want to know. But the more that you are in that, and the less that you surrender to that sense of the Bacano rune is there and ready to hold you and cradle you and protect you, it might actually take longer to emerge. So allow the Bacano rune to be your protector and your holder there. Hello Zoe, lovely to see you. The first time that you've caught the live, and you have got Iwaz, which is also a protector rune. But whereas Bacano is like a wrapping around energy, you know, it's like a cladding. You know, imagine like the birch tree, and then the green leaves come around and they shimmer, and we become very enchanted by the movement of the leaves, and we don't see the slender stem as much. And then they fall, and the slender stem is revealed, and there's a change going on all of the time with the Bacano rune, and a recognition that the Bacano rune is nurturing that which is young to become that which is in its maturity. Now that's part of its job, and it will protect and shield and offer, you know, do all sorts of tricksy stuff. Iwaz is a rune that is already in maturity and recognizes the eternal, wisest, most ancient part of ourselves and protects that. So it's more of a partner. If you imagine like an elder with a staff walking the land, and the staff is both, you know, helping you to walk along, and it can be a defense when it's needed, but it's also like a symbol of status, you know, that has often been gifted and is used in ritual, for example. So it's very different to the Bacano rune, which recognizes us in our innocence and our vulnerability. And I feel as if the Iwaz rune is saying to you, what is your, the word elderhood keeps coming to my mind. What are the things that people rely on you for? Recognize them. If you had a staff, you know, a big staff that your community had gifted to you, and they had placed runes upon it that honored you in your magnificence, you know, what would it say? It's owning that. And if you don't know what it would say, I'm going to suggest an exercise to you, which you can do. Maybe it's for other people as well in this point, but it's a really nice exercise to do, is to choose people that you like and trust who know you, not people that you do not like. It's not about that. And you can do it, you can say, you know, I've been asked to do this for homework, you know, because then it doesn't feel so bad. And ask them, what 3 words would you use to describe me? And see what comes back. You know, and you could ask 2 people, or you could ask 25, and see what words come back. I just posted on Facebook, I did it a while ago, and it was really powerful as an exercise for me in recognizing the qualities that other people saw in me. So what 3 words would you use to describe me? And your staff then becomes a representative of that, and it's recognizing that those words that people use to describe you, they're not necessarily like, they don't define you, but they define the service that you offer, and the strength that people see in you, and the qualities that they see in you, which is why it's on the staff. It's not necessarily like on you, it's the staff that recognizes that road that you have traveled. So maybe give that a try, Zoe, or you might already know, and you might go, yeah, you know, people see that in me. Just, you know, of the words that I got, so that you don't feel alone in doing this, that I loved, you know, people said wise, which was very nice, wise, insightful, funny came up. And what was interesting, I had a very old friend who'd known me for years and years and years, and she came, and the words that she used were very different. They were still just as lovely, but they were very different to the people who know me now. And that's when I realised, no, actually, my essence is the same, but the way that I project that out into the world and the service that I offer for people is different. And that's what the staff represents. It's not who you are. I'm going to cough again now. Lisa, you have got Yara. Yara for you today. Iwaz and Yara are actually really good partner runes. So Iwaz is like, the world tree. And Yara is like time, or the land revolving around the world tree. Imagine a time when our ancestors used to think that the world was flat. You can imagine the world tree in the centre and the land rotating around it. Summer, winter, summer, winter, summer, winter coming through. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Don't take it personally, Lisa. I blame London. Oh, Yara. I'm sure that an uncontrollable coughing fit coming up at the point of Yara when I was talking about winter and summer must mean something. Really disrupted my flow then. What does that mean? With our summer and our winter. You know what I'm seeing with the Yara rune? Is the Yara rune is the only rune that has two sides that aren't connected. It has a space in between. And that space can sometimes feel quite dizzying. It can feel a little bit disconcerting. And it reminds me that actually it's making me think about climate change and the way in which our social narratives about the seasons and how they work don't always reflect the reality of what's actually happening in our world. And I wanted to actually bring that back. I don't know if this is for everyone, Lisa, or if there's something specific for you around this, to that idea of individual weird and collective weird. And almost this sense in which the Yara rune is saying that, those stories that we have about things like, beautiful winters, a cultural story in the UK and in many places is a white Christmas. I can probably count on one hand the number of times that I've experienced a white Christmas. I don't know that many people have experienced a white Christmas. It's still a reality for many people, but not for everybody. And I think that Yara rune is reminding us almost that there's a cycle there between reality and story as well, that it's not just summer and winter. There is a partnership that's playing out all the time for us between the reality of what we see around us and the reality of what we've constructed through story, which is powerful and important to us. And that there are times when those two things clash. And I think that, for Lisa, for you, it's saying you're one of those people who is capable of crossing that divide and of leading others to do the same. Of saying the story of what you think is happening and what is actually happening are different. And we need to be able to cross from one state to the other, because those two things, similar to the Iwaz rune partnership that we were talking about right at the beginning, we need to be able to have a conversation between those two things. And I suspect that some of the reason that spiritual work and spiritual story in particular has come up as being more and more important for us in our cultures today is because we need to consciously reweave some of those stories so that we are engaged with the real world and not with what we see on the television or the stories that we have from the past that are what's the word that I'm looking for? It's not going to come. It will come later, and I'll be really annoyed that you know, that sort of harkening after a past that might not have even really been there, and you know, oh, it's all nostalgia. That's what I'm looking for. Nostalgic story. You know, that some of us are able to help others to cross that bridge, and that might be, you know, I'm literally just thinking it might be in terms of, you know, in our workplaces, the reality of what was and the reality of what is now, in our the financial climate, the reality of what was and the reality of what is now, in terms of the way in which we might need to change our lives in order to, you know, survive as a species and be more responsible as a species. What is the way things were, the way things are now, and the way things that need to be will require the creation of story and people who are able to lead and people who are able to be in that space between the two. So apologies that there was a huge coughing fit just before that happened. I hope that I will not get any more before the end. Good morning, Tracy. Good morning, Pamela. Suzanne says, I wonder if Loki helped the Tower card come out for me this week. Quite possibly. Tracy, you picked one, then another two fell out. So you picked Tewaz, then you got Giba and Algiz. I'm going to look at the three of them. So I have to be quite quick because I'm aware that we've gone over our normal hour, partially because I obviously had to keep going away and coughing. And I can see that, Pamela, you've got Tewaz as well. So we've done Tewaz with the Tewaz sword, which was Troy. So you can go back and you can look at the Tewaz there. I think that, Tracy, for you, with Tewaz and Gibo and Algiz, I'm really seeing that balance. It's the balance that's incredibly important. So it is paying a lot of attention to that and saying, if you want to pick up your sword, you know, your heroic sword, and make the difference, you know, out in the world, that you need to pay attention to your own energy, to your boundaries, to how much you're giving and how much you're receiving. And you need to recognize that with the Algiz rune, asking for support is a form of being a warrior. There is no weakness in it. There is no, oh, I should be able to do this myself. It's actually part of being a warrior, is recognizing that, you know, great warriors didn't make their own armor. You know, they might have done a few bits and pieces, but they certainly, you know, they weren't making all their own clothes. They were often, you know, acting in a war band, you know, not just one on their own. You know, that's the knights, you know, the knights of old, but, you know, not the Vikings or the Anglo-Saxons. You know, they were working in group. And so it's looking at that and saying there are times when you stand and you may seem like the Tewaz rune as if you are alone. There are times when you are in a place of exchange and gift giving, and there are times when you are asking for support, and you need to be able to do all three of those. So I hope that is helpful for you, Tracy. Pamela, you draw Tewaz as well. So I'm going to point you to what I said for Troy and for Tracy. I think the other thing that I would bring in mind with the Tewaz rune there is around truth. And I maybe even looking at doing some journaling around looking at life and sort of saying, what is my truth? What is my truth in this situation? What is my truth in this moment? What is the truth that I see? Not that you have to share with anybody else, but that is worth voicing. So using writing, spending like 20 minutes a day just writing on whatever is that comes to mind when you ask the question. My truth from this experience is, my truth from this moment is, my truth from what I have learned is, and really feeling into that, because that like creates the sword, you know, within us. Caroline, hello. I did quite a long piece for Erica on Northes, and I'm going to draw your attention back to the Northes Gibo partnership that I was talking about when I did the piece that was the sharing there. I think that might be what's of relevance for you there, so I'm going to put that into the ring there. Cheryl, thank you so much. This speaks very strongly about some changes I wanted to make for my children, how to duck out. That's fine, Cheryl. Joe, you say you're not too late. Well, we've overrun. We'll carry on going with Dargaz. So Dargaz is the leap of faith. That's what I'm feeling within that. It's that sense of which sometimes the only way we know is by stepping forward. You know, Dargaz is the gateway. And it's, you know, whereas I was talking about the warrior self and that planning and that preparation and that, you know, you limit all of the things that are outside of your control so that you have the best chances of winning. You know, it's a lot of what the warrior does, the warrior archetype does, But the Dargaz rune represents that which we can't control. We can simply say, there is nothing else that I can do to prepare myself for this more. The only thing that I can do to know is to do it, is what the Dargaz is speaking to there. So I'm going to leave you with that. Marie says, interesting, I'm currently immersed in an Athala painting leading me down the path of the ancestors. Oh, wonderful. Susan says, thank you. Suzanne, apologies, Suzanne. Thank you, she'll enjoy walking Odin in the land. Felicity, oh, I've lost you. Where have we gone? Felicity, thank you. Totally weaving in the things I've been reading, watching, working with. And Erica, a lot to ponder with the knots and need, which is why I think Cara, have a look at that for you as well. Interesting. Do you remember that Barcano Ingu's binding I was given? Oh, no, I'd forgotten that was you, Diane. Interesting. So yeah, maybe do start with that and perhaps look at it as being, at this point, it's about the Bacano energy and then allowing the Ingu's rune to be born through that. And Zoe says, thank you, quite apt, has been lost in purpose in various aspects. Wonderful. Well, thank you. I think this is the longest Middle Earth readings that we've ever done, and that's partially because obviously I had to go away and have some water. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. It's lovely to see you all. We have our... I'm doing a repeat of Seership with the Runes, the Seership with the Runes workshop on Friday. And I will be seeing some of you in the Half Space at our Inner Circle class, where we are doing our story session. We did our reading on Friday. We've got our story session coming on Friday. And anything else coming up this week? I know I'm seeing my mastery students lots this week, which is lovely, coming to the end of this year of mastery. And I know that a lot of people who are doing Awakening currently are asking me about mastery as well. So I'm very glad that I'm going to be doing the mastery program again. So I look forward to seeing mastery people at our mastery class this afternoon and at our co-working day. So see you all then. Lovely to see everybody. See you all again soon.